Shout out to Yella, man. Speaking of records, you were talking about earlier. One thing that I don't think I heard ever is the importance of playing records like Flashlight during a party and actually fighting other DJs, you know, physically going back and forth with other DJs over who's going to play songs like Flashlight. Can you take us back to that time and how important it was to play certain records?
You know, in the early days, man, we had so many different musical genres. We was just coming out of the soul and R&B, just getting into the funk era. Okay, we had disco. We was playing some all this. So as a DJ, you had all type of ingredients to mix into your gumbo of your set that night, and depending on what your crowd was, you know, you can get them going. But it was some records at that time, just take them over the top. And Flashlight and Aqua Boogie, Flashlight, Aqua Boogie with some of those two of those records, man. When you played them son of a guns, everybody ran to the dance floor. And Roger was notorious about trying to. I'd be working from 9 till about 11:30, quarter to 12, and he come up there. I kept everybody on the floor all this time. I got it down. I got it. Man, what you mean you got it? I'm finna drop this shit. So he did that shit a couple times on me. So before he could come take over and get all the credit for rocking the crowd, I dropped that shit. He get mad. And then he started coming up earlier, and that's when Gig caught us arguing that day over Flashlight. Okay? Because I'm like, nah, I'm not giving you, because I had the 12-inch version. I'm giving you my 12-inch version. Hell no. I play that goddamn album version. So anyway, that's how it was back then, man. You had so many different types of music to choose from, and all of it was rocking, man. You had badass disco songs, that KC and the Sunshine Band shit. That shit was rocking Alpine Village. That Shake, 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 and Rick James had just dropped, Mary Jane, and some other songs. Dude, there was so much to choose from, but you had certain songs that just, man, you drop that summer gun, it's going down. And Flashlight was one of those songs.
Okay. You know, as a DJ, how hard or easy was it to get LPs back in the day to play at a club? And it seems pretty expensive. I mean, I've seen certain crates, and I mean, you start to count them up, you're like, damn, that's $1,000. I mean, talk to us about that aspect.
That's why I started working for a record company, record distributor, so I can buy my records wholesale, because it was too expensive. To go buy a record back then was like, about $7-8 for my album. Might cost you $7-8, depending on what it was, might be $8 or $9. Okay. Then they came out with the 12 inches, which was cool, but you only got one cut, or maybe two at the most. So somebody dropped a bad album, you miss out all the album cuts. But here's the next problem. Even if you had the album and the 12-inch, the album grooves are narrower. So when you play the 12-inch, there's a big sound difference. Most people don't realize that. If you play a 12-inch, because it's 21 minutes of music on a 12-inch on the per side of a record. 12-inch, whether it's a 12-inch or album, 21 minutes. But because it's only one song, the engineer can open the I call it the valves up and let the bass and shit hit a lot harder, because you ain't got to worry about making those small ass grooves. You only got one song. So that made the 12 inches sound much better. Much better. But you had to have, if you had two of them, that was great. But most guys had the 12-inch and the album cut, and it was a difference in the mix. You had to turn your one side up a whole lot more, and you still wouldn't get the same bass as you would on the 12-inch.
Don't think I ever knew that about records. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. All right. Something else that caught my eye, and I did know this, but let's break down the history of this. Talk to us about your first time seeing someone scratch, because that came to the West Coast a little bit later. It was an East Coast thing, as mentioned in the documentary as well. And Dre was one of the first people that people ever saw scratch. So can you talk to us about just the scratching and when you remember that coming into play?
That just like we said in the documentary, that came from Davey DMX. We had never seen it before. We knew Curtis had a record on a song on his album called AJ Scratch. We loved that song in Eve After Dark. That was a big song for us, and we couldn't figure out how to make that song. And when he came, Davey and Curtis played Eve After Dark. We asked him how to do it, and that's how he turned Yellow on how to do the shit. And then Yellow later taught Dre. Yellow was the one that learned all that shit. I never cared to learn scratching. I didn't have a need for it. I thought it was just, kind of strange, one of them things. And what the fuck? And as you can still see today, it's still very popular. What do I know?
Yeah, talk to me about that, because you're a little bit older at this time. You always a little bit older. So you see these guys put these expensive records on their turntable, and they're scratching, basically messing them up, right? I mean, how did the older generation see that? You know what I mean? Like, what are you doing? Yo, stop.
You would think it would mess it up, but records are pretty resilient. Okay, needles are real delicate. There's not a lot of weight far as on the arm. If you look at a needle arm on the 1200, that's something that is very, very light. In fact, as a kid, I had a buddy of mine. He actually would put real needles in his arm of his turntable and play his records. No bullshit. That would fuck him up, okay? But it would work. I tell you, something else that would work too. If you ever forget your microphone at the house, plug your headphones into your microphone input. It'll work.
Yeah, yep. Old school trick.
Yeah.
Damn. All right. Yeah. So, all right, let's talk about, you talked about it, your first time booking Curtis Blow. That was also mentioned in the documentary. One of the biggest rappers at that time, the king of rap, they were calling him, or something like that. I forgot what his title was, but he was the man. And you bring him out to LA. How did that whole relationship start, and what was it like when he was out here?
When Curtis first came to LA, he was on Mercury Records. My buddy he was a promotion guy for Mercury, and he tracked down the label, Mercury Records, called it with Russell. Me and Russell cut a deal on the phone to bring Curtis out for Christmas rap. That ain't my guess, so I got to call him back. So we cut a deal to bring Curtis out right before Christmas rapping. And that's what we did. And Russell asked me, could they play Friday instead of Saturday? I didn't think he knew anything about Roger. Somehow or another, Roger had connected with Russell and got them to come to play the sports arena the next night.